nuclear power provides a lot of power from a relatively small footprint for a very long time without any carbon emissions at all. So those are the reasons why it's become important for countries.
Welcome to The Switch. I'm Elena Casas. Nuclear energy is on the brink of a comeback. 22 countries, including the US, France and the UK, signed a declaration at last year's COP aiming to triple nuclear capacity globally by 2050. Well, I'm joined now by Tom Greatrex, CEO of the Nuclear Industry Association. Tom, hi. This 2050 target requires an estimated 740 gigawatts of additional nuclear capacity to come online by that time. That seems very ambitious. How will we get there?
It is ambitious, and it's ambitious for two very good reasons. One is, in the last couple of years, energy security has become much more of a factor in countries' consideration. And secondly, and the focus on COP, was also about decarbonisation. And nuclear power provides a lot of power from a relatively small footprint for a very long time without any carbon emissions at all. So those are the reasons why it's become important for countries. But it's a lot more than we've done over the last few years. It goes back to really the scale of what we did at the very start of the nuclear industry in the UK and France and the US, where we built a lot.
That phase of intensive nuclear construction was back in the 1970s and 80s, and many of those plants are now approaching the end of their lives. 200 out of 420 reactors in operation around the world are scheduled to be decommissioned by 2050, meaning just replacing existing capacity is already a challenge. Some countries are delaying those retirements, and the US is even looking at restarting plants that have been shut down.
It buys a little bit of time, but not enough time. And the thing to remember about the new designs and current designs is that they will generate power for at least 60, probably more likely 80 years. They're long-term pieces of infrastructure. Once they're built, they provide a lot of power for a very long time. That's why it's an imperative not just to increase the amount of capacity, but even to stand still. There's a lot to do. I think that's something that governments have now understood.
Nuclear plants around the world, though, have struggled with long construction delays and massive cost overruns. In France, EDF's flagship new reactor at Flamanville was originally meant to be completed in 2012 and still isn't online, while Britain's first nuclear plant in 2 decades at Hinkley Point is at least 4 years behind schedule, while the original cost estimate has almost doubled to $43 billion in 2015 prices, meaning it's set to be the most expensive power station in the world.
One of the reasons, though, that if you take Hinkley as an example, is that that is the first time for a generation in the UK we built a nuclear power station. So effectively, what EDF and the developers had to do was restart a supply chain, which hadn't done it for a very long period of time. But if you look at Hinkley, from the 2 units being built there, from Unit 1 to Unit 2, there's about a 30% efficiency gain.
So let's talk about the new technology that's being developed here, small modular reactors. There are a number of companies, of course, working on these designs around the world. Here in Britain, the public body Great British Nuclear is making £20 billion of funding available. But how close are they to being operational?
In Canada, the first construction of an SMR will start. Actual construction will start in the early part of next calendar year. So they're real. They're close to being available. They're not yet available.
Is it too soon to estimate how they will compare, these small modular reactors, in terms of cost and time of construction to larger reactors?
Well, anything that you're able to build in modules in a factory and construct on site will be quicker than starting from scratch on a site. A lot of the interest in small modular reactor technologies is coming from direct users, data centres, etc., who can see that they're going to need a lot of power, and this is one way of being able to do that in a sustainable way.
Nuclear power expansion is a rare topic of political consensus in many Western countries. It even has cross-party support in the US, but fears around public safety remain. Germany closed all its nuclear plants after the Fukushima disaster, and in Ukraine, the Zaporizhzhia power station has found itself on the front line. The IAEA has warned an attack on the plant could trigger a major nuclear incident.
Well, I think one of the lessons from Zaporizhzhia is that the integrity of that power station hasn't been compromised. And, you know, the designs that there are currently in the regulation, you know, is built to withstand terrorist attack, jets crashing into them, all sorts of highly, highly unlikely things to happen, but those are factored into and built into the design of those reactors and the construction. So that already happens. And that's the reason why these are some of the safest forms of generating electricity that exist in the world.
What about the disposal of nuclear waste, though? Presumably, if we increase nuclear energy capacity, we'll be dealing with a lot more of it. So is there a plan in place for that?
There is. If you had a dishwasher tablet, that's the equivalent to all of, for every person, a dishwasher tablet is equivalent to all of the high-level nuclear waste that has ever been produced, which means you can put it all in an Olympic-sized swimming pool and still have plenty of space left over. So it's perfectly manageable because it's a relatively small by volume and we know what to do with it. Currently, we vitrify it, turn it into glass, put it in concrete casks and store it on the surface. Eventually, will be stored underground.
Clearly, the expansion of nuclear that is targeted for 2050 is going to require significant political will around the world and overcoming some technical challenges, as we talked about. Are you optimistic it can be done?
I am. I'm optimistic that it can be done because I think it needs to be done, fundamentally. It's an ambitious target for a very good reason. It's required. It's an ambitious target that industry needs to step up to and meet.